sink into the minds of voters.
All right, Tom, thank you. Consumer advocates are calling on the Federal Court to impose a massive penalty on HSBC Bank for allegedly failing to protect its customers from a spoofing scam. The bank will face a hearing this week and is expected to admit it failed customers in a statement of agreed facts. Alexandra Brooks is the Vice President of the Scam Victims Alliance, and her son was a victim of a bank-related scam. He lost $100,000, was offered a $1,000 compensation. She joins us now from Sydney. Alexandra, thanks for talking to us. What do you hope happens today? What would you like to hear?
I would love to hear ASIC step up to the plate and absolutely demand that these victims are reimbursed directly. So many accepted such a pitiful settlement in the early days because it's just so hard to navigate Australia's awful system. The Australian Financial Complaints Authority made it so difficult for these HSBC victims. They had to wait to get a panel determination, and even then, many of the victims did not receive full compensation.
What's been your journey to coming to where you are now, sitting being interviewed about this?
Well, it's shocking. I think if Australians really knew how much our politicians have betrayed us by listening to the bank lobbyists, they would just be shocked. I mean, my son's scam was absolutely horrific. The bank now charges interest on that loss to profit from it, and the Australian Financial Complaints Authority says that's all A-OK. In fact, they told him it was the same as if he'd gambled his money away. And these are the kinds of barriers scam victims face. ASIC makes money for our government, supposedly regulating our corporations. It's time that it was resourced properly to make sure Australians are not ripped off.
So the way I understand it, Alexandra, the bank's obligations were not met in terms of several codes, but it was more about how they handled the complaints afterwards and dealt with them that is what ASIC is probing into, if you like.
Yeah, and it's really rare that ASIC probes into it. So many scam patterns are systemic, like this HSBC one. So many of these victims, what scammers do is they find a weakness and they exploit it really, really rapidly. And this was so successful. Other banks were involved in this scam as well, but HSBC's systems were clearly broken. I've got victims who, while they were being scammed, had a whole new bank account opened in their name, and the scammers got away with like 68,000 Australian dollars, but all in British pounds, to a bank account that was never opened. It's bizarre how they managed to get through HSBC systems like this. So it was clear that ASIC had to act, and that's rare. In most cases, ASIC does not act like this.
Is there a mandatory bank reimbursement scheme, if you like, something that's already in place to protect people?
Oh, how I laugh. So the $1,000 that my son was originally offered, that's been taken away because we have stood up the fight to help make Australians aware of how banks are profiting from scams. The bank has Minister Molino in the palm of their hands with its shiny-shoed lobbyists walking the halls of Parliament House, convincing them that telcos and digital platforms need to pay as well, which is true. They absolutely need to be on the hook. But hello, the payment, a bank scam cannot happen unless there's a payment method. And it's the mule accounts and the money laundering in our banking system that is letting Australians be fleeced.
Many people, when they hear of scams, they say, oh, well, sure, you could spot a scam. It's not the bank's fault. It's the consumer's fault. What was the case here, and why wasn't there red flags for people?
So firstly, most people trust their banks, right? We give the bank our money to keep it safe for us. So it's incredulity when you've been scammed. You can't believe the complex methods that the scammers will put together. And they literally work in networks. There's like social media for scammers. They all take their little piece of the pie and they work together till they find a really lucrative exploit, and then they absolutely go hell for leather. So in this case, we know there was 23 million lost, but even our Scam Watch says that's only around 13% of scams are lost. So really, that could be $176 million that HSBC lost in their system and didn't pay back to victims. banks profit on that capital that's in their system and they rely on it to keep making their profits. And this is what we're letting our banks do. This scam was super complicated. The text message threat started in the thread of the HSBC text messages to the victims, and they were told they were absolutely being scammed and that they needed to make these payments. And many of them watched their account drain before their very eyes while they were on the phone to who they thought was the bank. The systems weren't strong enough to protect it.
Yeah, very complicated.